And so the ones you've seen so far are the ones that have shared, and some of those guys have shared 4 or 5 times because they've ascertained they're so much smarter that even if they show you how to do it, that you're not going to compete with them. But the vast majority, I'm on board, pull up the gangplank. And that's the real world. Just in case, at least you be, especially like in Britain's a small island. The United States, they're a little more giving because it's such a big place. But I'd forgotten about him. I don't know why, but anyway, because I was reading the emails from the guys that are, deals that didn't close at the end of the year, and now they're going to the whip. And when a deal doesn't close on the last few days of December, you'd think they'd be ready, the banks and everybody be ready to go the first working day of the January. They still don't come back to work till the 10th or whenever it is. Yeah, and it's and in the European countries, it's even it's worse. It's worse. So we'll see if he will spare some time. And I believe he pivoted at least once, meaning, again, pivot. Oil and gas to healthcare is a pivot. Oil and gas, exploration companies to drilling companies, a morph, because it's still in the same area. But some of the guys that are from Oklahoma and Arkansas and places like that, I always like to watch your face because the way they talk, the words they use are not necessarily the Queen's English, and so it's always interesting. Last night you saw
Fear.
who?
Fear.
Fear. Well, you ought to be, that's your specialization. I mean, you ought to be able to write War and Peace on that. And the parts of the brain and hypothalamus, and you saw something else, though.
The super rich.
Super rich, which is, what's the bottom line on fear? There's not a bottom line, other than fear is false, expectations appearing real. And one of the examples I give, and the kids, the real young kids that come through the program relate to it. When you're a little kid, you're normally afraid of the dark. Okay, not all little kids are afraid of the dark. I was. So I presuppose that all little kids are afraid of it. But when you squint in the dark, I mean, you can kind of imagine all kind of shit when you go like this in the dark. Well, that's what just extended on when you're 20, 30, whatever you are, that happens. And again, it's based on absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So you fear the worst. And then, like that speech from FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, fear itself, comments about fear.
Conditioning. It can be conditioned and unconditioned.
Correct. And I think today after lunch, I'll say it now, Winston Churchill was a pussy when he was a little kid. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt was a pussy. Wuss. Both come from rich families, properly educated, etc. And one of the reasons, and Churchill writes about it in his second or third volume of his memoirs, that to condition himself out of that's why he became a war correspondent. One of the reasons he became a war correspondent. And then when he got thrown out of office, when he was the Minister of the Admiralty, and then he had all those people died at Tripoli, and then he volunteered. He came back and volunteered, and because of his station in life, and because he was a former minister, he became a company commander, then a battalion commander during the First World War. And it's like that scene in Apocalypse Now where Robert Duvall says, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." Well, Churchill loved the smell of gunpowder and cannons and shit, and he was quite a supposedly quite a intelligent and brave company and battalion commander and led his men and did a bunch of great things. But he pushed himself. Teddy Roosevelt, on the other hand, and I think I'm sure I've talked about this on YouTube before, during the Battle of San Juan Hill during the Spanish-American War, he led his men in the charge, and he had 80 bullet holes in his blouse, his fancy hat with plume, his boots, heels of his boots got shot off, the saddle, the stirrups that you put your feet in got shot off, the gear around the horse's face, by some miracle, got shot off without really hurting the horse too bad. 80 bullets. And then after that, he had Jesus Christ syndrome. Well, fuck, I must be able to dodge bullets. And so he did that a few times, and you force yourself. And when I was a little boy, I've already talked about some of the shit I did, because I saw my dad up here, and I wanted to, do brave shit, and I'm still pushing the edges of the envelope. And so you can unfear yourself, and that's one of the reasons that we do the boxing, because a lot of the kids have never been in a fist fight. I can't imagine you going through school in a schoolyard, not somebody punching you or slapping you. Of course, when I was there, the teachers were punching and slapping you, in addition to the kids. But now we've had kids that have come through here. They're 25 years old, and I mentioned this the first day. Have never been yelled at, never really been strongly reprimanded. Never been slapped, spanked in any way by their parents or any schoolmates, which is hard to imagine for me. I remember, Derek won't like this, our youngest son, when he was about 15-ish, and he was going to a fancy prep school that didn't have athletics. In hindsight, I wouldn't do that again. But anyway. And I come home, and he's in our house in Palos Verdes, and he's training on the big bag. And now he was a brown belt, and so he was pretty athletic. And he was training on the big bag, and then he was training on the small bag. And what are you doing? He said, I'm just working out. He was getting ready for a fight that was having that Friday afternoon, and this was like Monday or Tuesday. And so I'm searching, trying to find out the results of the fight. Over the weekend, didn't say anything other than that he had kind of a black eye, and but he apparently thumped some kid pretty good. Which, of course, then you get called in. And, what else about fear? Yes, sir.
It's one of the most motivational political tools that you can.
Fear fucking works. Stalin, Hitler, all the guys. Well, I say all the guys. The tyrants, many of which on this wall that have influenced me. And by influence, I mean and again, being a high-performance person doesn't mean you're a good person. It means that you get shit done, basically. And so I've taken some of the things that they've done that worked, but fear does work. And I wish that fear didn't work, or I wish that love worked. But if love worked, again, you wouldn't be here. What else about fear? Yeah.
It's really contagious, and just your subconscious picking up on the pheromones will make your body want to succumb to that fear from people around you.
Yeah, and I was just watching some mob activity in France this morning on the news. And Sally's mom lives in France, and she lives about 400 miles from Paris, a village of about 5,000, and they're knocking out windows and doing crap there. And it's been out of hand a long, long time. Okay, so you saw fear, and the other thing you saw. Okay, and what's the takeaway?
The leverage part.
Pardon?
The leverage, borrowing money to invest. And if the cash flow is more than the EMI, it's a good borrow.
What a genius. Okay. Okay. And I just read you from the Society of Chartered Accountants a couple of days ago where they said that cash flow lending isn't really possible for startups anymore. Any comments about anything that you saw? Would you please pass in your homework? Yes, sir.
Because economic crisis, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Amen. Praise Allah. But I'm at that, but I wasn't always at that end of the continuum, okay? And even though I haven't been at the poor end of the continuum in a long time, but I knew, and I was putting myself forward with some pretty wealthy people. Thanks. Some pretty wealthy people, and and I sought these wealthy people out. And it's not dissimilar to what you're going to be doing with the QLA, and it's not dissimilar. And they didn't have a LinkedIn, and I didn't have an alumni association. In 1991, I was chosen as the most successful alumni in the history of my school, and I gave the commencement speech. And people, it's online, and people say, I didn't say one bad word in the commencement speech, which I didn't. I didn't say one bad word in the commencement speech. And at that time, there wasn't really YouTube. I didn't know it was going to wind up being on YouTube, but I knew that it was going to be posterity, so I didn't want fuck, shit, cunt to be part of my posterity back in 1991. Now, I don't give a shit now, but people sought me out as a graduate of that school. Now nobody seeks me out, or almost nobody, because they want success, but they don't want any pressure. Anything else about that? Yes, sir.
Yeah, as soon as they gave it a AAA rating, perception is reality.
Yeah.
Even though it was shit.
Yeah. AAA, and there's AAA, AA, single A, then triple B, and one of the biggest jokes is when you're a member of the Better Business Bureau. You know, in your communities, they have Better Business Bureaus, and you get this little certificate or stamp, and it doesn't mean a fucking thing, really. What it means is that you haven't been in the headlines or been in jail recently, and so you're a member of the Better Business Bureau. But a lot of people put on their website, member of the Better Business Bureau. You have hands up?
One thing I noticed, I've always noticed in the past, is the media always paints the super rich as the immoral, and the morality level, when they talk about this super rich, coming through QLA now, seeing what we've seen in the seminar, just changing as a person, I'm starting to realize, like, well, fuck yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's interesting how there's this swath in the world of people like, oh, the super rich are doing this and they're doing that. Well, it's the fucking system.
Yeah, and now, as I pointed out, guys like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and they've always been hard-ass, but now they're trying to paint their legacies, and they're doing a pretty good job of painting a legacy that they forget how rough and tough they were. I'm going to show you a film later today that I saw late last night. It's a 16 and a 17-year-old kid with a dial phone on, and I don't know if it's gone viral, and they're trying to figure out how to use a dial phone. And they put their finger in the dial thing, and they take the zero about halfway, and then they pull their finger out, and then the thing spins back, but they never pick up the handset at the beginning. You know, and then they're going like this, and then they're looking at each other, and we're smart. We got to figure this out, and it's hilarious. But old people that are my age and older, you know, have a similar thought about when they're given a lot of this high-tech stuff, and a lot of the guys my age or around my age wait until their grandkids come around for them to show them how to use it. And the first time I got online was April the 1st, April Fool's Day, 2001. And we got a computer, and I talked to Kelly, our daughter, and Kelly, I called her on her cell phone, and she said, Daddy, just wait till I get home, I'll fix it. I didn't want to wait, and so then I called Sally. And Sally says, when I get back into town, just leave it where it is, I'll fix it. And then I still fucked with it, and they said the mouse, and I didn't know what a mouse was. And this computer had a little button thing that you moved around in the middle, and that was the mouse. And so I'm looking for something that looks like a mouse. And then later on, we got a real mouse thing, and but I was not dissimilar to those two teenagers with the dial phone, and of course now. It's always ironic to me that I've been chairman of some fairly big IT companies, and but I didn't know any more about IT than I did about oil and gas. And I'm sure we missed opportunities, but I looked to the board. I didn't call them the dream team. Okay, if it's such a great deal, explain to me why it's such a great deal. You know, can we finance it? Does free cash flow cover? And in IT, a lot of stuff that isn't covered by free cash flow. And this is why I stay away from, for the most part, startups, because they haven't been de-risked. Nobody has created any revenue. And most PE firms, although there are startup PE firms, there are seed capital PE firms, but I mean, most PE firms want somebody to have already generated revenue, and in many cases they want to say, okay, $1 million in revenue first, because they know that the first or second investor has taken the risk. Anything else about anything that you've seen or you saw last night? Okay, yes, sir.
Sort of similar to what he said, a lot of people wanted to blame that crash on the super rich, but all of the people were signing off on houses and cars they knew they couldn't afford, spending money on credit that they knew they wouldn't pay back. Yeah. So it was really everyone in sort of. When
our youngest son was in between undergraduate and graduate school, he worked, and for those that do go to school, I suggest you work between, if you're going to go on to graduate degrees, and he was selling subprime mortgages. And I told him, like I told all the kids, be first to work, last to leave, make 300 cold calls a day, and you'll lead the nation in sales. I don't give a fuck what you're selling. So he was first to work, last to leave, and he made 300 cold calls a day, and he led the nation in sales. And he was selling people, in bumfuck Mississippi, $300,000 houses, and they came up with a reduced format where you didn't have to really produce income tax returns, where you didn't have to verify income, just to get people through the door. And it was a recipe for disaster. And I used to say, Derek, did she work? Well, that's not on the form, Dad. We don't care if they work. And so virtually anybody could qualify for a $200,000 or $300,000 loan mortgage. And anybody that knew anything about anything knew that eventually it was going to implode. Okay, YouTube.